Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I'm here today to give a talk reading out a message from Sheikh As-Sufi. I believe there is a series of talks of giving letters from various different sheikhs in this way. Before we start, we'll have some Quran.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الله نور السماوات والأرض مثل نوره كمشكاة فيها مصباح المصباح في زجاجة الزجاجة كأنها كوكب دري يوقد من شجرة مباركة زيتونة لا شرقية ولا غربية يكاد زيتها يضيء ولو لم تمسسه نور على نور يهدي الله لنوره من يشاء ويضرب الله الأمثال للناس والله بكل شيء عليم آمنت بالله صدق الله مولانا العظيم.
The translation of those ayats that Hafiz Abdul Qadir just recited is as follows. Allah is the light of the heavens and the earth. The metaphor of his light is that of a niche in which there is a lamp. The lamp inside a glass, the glass like a brilliant star, lit from a blessed tree, an olive, neither of the east nor of the west. Its oil all but giving off light, even if no fire touches it. Light upon light. Allah guides to his light whoever he wills, and Allah makes metaphors for mankind, and Allah has knowledge over all things. In houses which Allah has permitted to be built and in which his name is remembered, there are men who proclaim his glory morning and evening, not distracted by trade or commerce from the remembrance of Allah and the establishment of Salah and the payment of Zakat, fearing a day when all hearts and eyes will be in turmoil, so that Allah can reward them for the best of what they did and give them more from his unbounded favour. Allah provides for anyone he wills without reckoning. Now this is a message that Sheikh Abdul Qadir gave at the Dallas College only a few years ago in 2016. It is an address to the students of the college. Was a college of leadership for graduates and postgraduates, and it's in Cape Town. And I think it is, inshallah, I'll read it out to you in full. It's a complete message. I think it is complete. It is particularly pertinent to the times, and even more pertinent than in 2022 than it was in 2016. Also, I think it is, I have to say, Sheikh Abdul Qadir, who you may or may not know, died in August last year, having been Muslim for over 50 years. It was a Sufi Shaykh of the Tarqias for over 50 years. Became Muslim in the late 60s. And as a man of the West, he was someone who understood the times and the situation in which we, in particular, live here in London. Bismillah. Welcome. I wanted to meet with you as I've not had a chance to meet with you and get some idea of who you are. I want to suggest to you some ideas. The thing of learning is a very difficult matter because it's not the absorption of previously held ideas. I mean, if you follow Dr. Ali in one direction, so he's a teacher of the college, If you followed his intellect, he might take you entirely in a direction. And if you follow Karim, he might brilliantly take you in an entirely opposite direction. And at the end of the day, there would be no meeting point between the two, which does not make sense, because the real secret of leadership is to get on with everyone, to be able to embrace everybody. So the matter of learning is not in this teacher or that teacher, nor is it the amassing of information, because a teacher can structure information in such a way that you could think that this is it, and it isn't. It could just be a point of view. Now equally, there's not anything that is absolutely, that's how it is, that is correct. So in a sense, to be in a college, it has to be that you are here on your own. You are alone and you have to make sense of it. In the same way that when you go into the world, you're on your own and you have to make sense of it. Forget the history books. If you go by the television, from what you can pick up on television, it is clear that you're being presented with the view that essentially, you know in yourself instinctively, is a lie, is rubbish. You see the election of a great nation try to decide who their leader should be, but it doesn't work. Whatever the social structure is, you need a social structure that works. And what you have to ask yourself is, what is the social structure in which I can function and in which nobody can force me what to think? It follows from this there is not anybody that you can force to think the same as you. And at the same point, you have to find a commonality that connects you so that you are not alone. If you look at my book I recently published, which was the entire city, at the beginning of the text on the St. Bartholomew's Day massacre, when all that debate was going on, one of the writers said, "I think it is shocking that a Frenchman doesn't have a common factor with another Frenchman, but he has a common factor with his religious equivalent." In other words, they are connected through their religion. And it is the same today. Basically, what you have is an atheist community, by and large, that does not believe in anything. They all have an inheritance or a memory of something that was the early religion. That is true of those whose grandparents are Muslim and those whose grandparents are Christian. You have to begin to think profoundly about your belief, and you have to open yourself out to people who may not have the same belief as yourself. You must not barricade them or cut yourself off from them. You have to be open to them, and at the same time, they can't captivate you. If they captivate you with an idea, or they captivate you with a theology, you're back in the same trap. What we're talking about is the importance of the individual, that what he believes in and what he chooses to hold on to, no one can interfere with. No one can take it from him, and no one can impose on him any higher value than what he has. This is a big thing. It is liberating, and at the same time, it is a warning to all of you that you have to find the reality of yourself as you live among your brothers. You have to get on with them. You have to collaborate with them. You have to guide them. You have to warn them. You have to listen. And when people warn you and guide you, you are not to reject them because it is someone else. Are you following what I'm saying? At the present moment in South Africa, there is a structural crisis going on, and the media coverage with the story of what is happening does not get to the matter of what it is. If you take all that apparatus and you examine another country like Russia, you could make the same model and show how they are all dreadful, how the political class are dreadful. You could reject the political class, you could reject the people of ideas, and yet you would be in exactly the same boat. If you get a country like Italy, with its incredibly rich culture, history and literature, you would find exactly the same thing with people. The coherent, educated people can tell you why their country doesn't know what is happening. You must realize that you have to find those people whom you can share just the experience of being with them and tolerate them. Just to be able to tolerate another is enormously difficult, especially the cleverer you are and the brighter you are, the more you think you have got it, and they are wrong. So you have to realize that when you encounter something that you know in your heart is wrong, and you have to stand by that and not let anyone corrupt it, or anyone force you to believe what they believe, to follow what they follow, to do what they do. In other words, you are in that sense apolitical, or you are total politics. Because at that point, you will find other people who will say, I'm with you. You can open your arms to them and welcome them. You will find that you will gather together the men of quality and the men of trust, of what Ibn Khaldun called asabiyah, or brotherhood, that is higher than brotherhood, and that is possible. Once you know it is possible, then everything opens up. You are faced with immediate problems of where you are and what you plan to do. If you think of something called career, you must not get caught up. A man spends all his life studying economics, and by the time he has finally mastered it, he finds the whole financial system has collapsed. The currency system has collapsed, and he is left with nothing. You may have a structural idea of how society should be organized, and yet you have again taken for granted the way society is structured with all its contradictions. It will let you down in the shortest possible time. So it all comes back on yourself. It all comes back to you. It comes back on who you are for yourself, but I'm not talking subjectivity. I'm talking about the very essence of your identity. It is something that you can't explain or express in a way that is satisfactory. The man whose portrait is on the wall, the Earl of Essex, took him all of his lifetime to work it out. The minute he knew what to do, he started to act on it. And suddenly, from being one of the most famous and respected people in the land, he was shunned. The Earl of Essex tried to create a society of men who have a common bond that is part of their humanity. He was taken away and his head was cut off. That was the end of him, but it is not the end of the story. There are people and the things that you study who have made the effort and the time they live to make sense of the world, and you have to take them seriously. You may not agree with them. For instance, I could talk for hours with Karim about Tolstoy, and I know his opinion is very contrary, and my opinion is contrary. And yet there is a perception of something in Tolstoy that you can't deny, that you can recognize and pass on. In other words, you are going to be presented with leadership and men of politics who try to force things to their way, and when they do it, it doesn't work. But sometimes people are right. Sometimes you have to bear in mind, and once you are right, their work does not die, it continues. Once you are right, find confirmation and consolation with each other. This is in the Quran, and you will find it in Shaykh Ibn Ajib's commentary on the sleepers in the cave, who are awakened in a world which everything they knew had gone. It just vanished, and they had to start again. They had to go out. They knew the truth about Allah, but they couldn't begin, because outside were people who ate all kinds of things, who did all kinds of things, and who were all kinds of things. But they had to go out to them and be part of them. The commentary of Ibn Ajiba is the best guidance that you will find in all the time that you are here. That is my message. It is up to you. I can't do it for you. I can't impose my thinking on you or anything on you. And I have to tell you that if people are doing that to you, you have to reject it, and you must be true to yourself. As the author in the first book in the entire city says, there is no such thing as sovereignty. He then further says that you have to find out that the only thing that there is resistance. By what you know in your heart and by what you have learned and followed, you have to know, therefore, that you have to resist. And that is and what it is that you have to resist. Look at the newspapers when they tell you what to do. A born South African is very different to a person coming from another country. Yet he can make the same mistakes, the same errors. So really all I am saying is that I'm setting you all completely free, and you have to live with it. Don't blame me and don't blame your teachers. It will be up to you to decide what to do, where and with whom you decide to do it. It's not good to do it alone. You have to find like spirits and be with them. You have to help each other and stand by each other and put up with each other. That is really the message, I hope, of Dallas College. I have a great belief that from among you will emerge leaders and people who will guide other people who stand by them and support them, people who will warn them, but never, never, never surrender what what you know in your heart is right. If you continue to act in a way that all these people turn against you, there are two possibilities. One is that they were right and you were wrong, in which case that is it. But it may be that you have not understood something about your very self. For that you have to turn to someone who will give you guidance about yourself, so that you don't think only the opinion of yourself and your parents and who they were and what they were is all there is. I set you free, and at the same time you are on your own. And at the same time you must create brotherhood. Create brothers, do it by standing by one another, and you have to resist. The things that are happening in the world demand resistance more than ever before. There has never been an age where the irrational and the devaluation of everything that matters has dominated thinking, teaching and behaviour. And you have to resist. You have to say, no, that is not it. You will have success, and Allah will give you success. Allah will give you good companions, and Allah will not make you alone, but with other people. Allah give you success, Allah give you victory, and most of all, the victory of yourself. Having faced up to that, do not think then you are the only one who has got the answer. Now that was the address that the Shaykh gave to his students, and it is something that I've in a very different setting. I thought it was something that was relevant and useful to hear for anyone who came today. In particular, the Shaykh stressing that the individuality of each and every person, and that to hold on to what you know in your heart to be true is something that cannot be compromised. This goes right to the very condition of being human. But it has never been more important, especially with what's happened in the last 2 years, where that has been eroded and attacked more than ever before. And that is only something that is going to increase. This is what the Shaykh has said here is something that needs to be repeated. It needs to be emphasized. It needs to be taken on. And I said at the beginning that the Shaykh Abdul Qadir was a man of the West. He was a Scotsman. He became Muslim in the late 60s. And you can see in that address that the blending of the Deen with European culture in a way that has it's not even, it doesn't have tension, but it's actually the opposite. It's something that is harmonious. Each reinforces the other. The Deen only glorifies the better aspects of European culture. And you can see in this way that the Shaykh, his message on the importance of individuality goes right back to the origins of Europe, where Europe began with the story of Achilles, with the story of Troy, the story of Achilles, and this is the fundamental message of that, and that's what gave birth to European civilization. And this is something that the Shaykh is stressing above and beyond anything else. He said you have to be true to yourselves. You cannot compromise. And that once you've learned to be true to yourselves, you have to come together with other people. You have to learn to tolerate each other. And these are the things that in particular we find so difficult individually and as a society now. That people, they've completely lost the ability to speak to each other. Everyone just shouts at each other on Twitter or wherever. But there's very little actually understanding, very little real tolerance, and very little people moving forward together with a joint purpose, with a shared activity. Now, there was just one other anecdote, just to highlight or just to try and illustrate the way that Sheikh Abdul Qadir went about. He went about instructing his murids. And I was listening to a talk recently of his, which again he gave a few years ago. And he spoke about the triumvirate of power, how power rests on not where we're told it is, but it's in the banks and the corporations, and that the media is the propaganda for the banks, and politics is just is financing the masses. Now, having spoken about this on the grand global stage, about the way, about where power lies and how it moves, the Shaykh concluded at the end of that. He said that what a Sufi must be free to go to Zurich if he needs to. Like if tomorrow he needs to go to Zurich, he must be in a position where where nothing could prevent him from going, because that's what he wants to do, or that's what he needs to do, or he has a feeling, he just thinks that I should maybe be in Zurich tomorrow. And that was that. He said so that was the conclusion of all of that. He said that the Sufi is the one who's in a position where if tomorrow he needs to up sticks, perhaps he's living in London and he needs to leave, he will just up and go with nothing holding him back. And you can think, well, what's so significant about that? Why? What's that? How is that connected to tasawwuf in any way? And why is this great man making a point of this, having spoken about some of the most important things of our time? And the thing is that a murabbi, a Sufi sheikh, a man of instruction, a teacher, a guide, is someone who understands the times, he understands the people in front of him, and it is in accordance, and it is always changing. It is never the same. Because of that, because it's always in each particular moment. But one of the particular difficulties of our time, and the diseases actually of our time, is that people, that we have been enslaved to contracts. Is that contracts enslave us? Whether it be mortgages, whether it be employment contracts, whether it be sales, all of these different contracts means that we don't have the freedom. We don't realise just how constricted we are, in fact. That in times gone past, that people had far more freedom than we do now. That we simply don't have think, well, I'd like to maybe go to Zurich tomorrow, but I've got, what about, I've got this, and I've got that, and I've got this, and I'm sorry, I can't. And all of these contracts, all of it has all arisen from, they're all directly as a result of usury, and nothing other than that, which we know is the only thing that Allah has declared war on in the Quran. And so, in times gone by, people perhaps were, in different societies, sometimes people were slaves to food, to their stomachs, or they were enslaved to different things. But in this time, what people are slave to is not just the contracts, but also this whole structuralist way of thinking, a whole structuralist way of being. It simply cannot, that encloses around people and can't move. And of course, Sheikh Abdul Qadir, in his inimitable style, uses as his mithal, uses as his example. It's not just, well, go to Bukhara or something like that. It says, go to Zurich. Zurich, of course, is one of the centres of global finance. I had a friend just telling me the other day, actually, that Zurich is extraordinary. Every other car is either a Maserati or a Ferrari. It is one of the absolute, one of the places in the world that it is most intoxicating for in terms of the dunya. And yet here Sheikh Abdul Qadir is using as his mithal, a Sufi must be able to go to Zurich. And of course, by doing that, it's forcing, saying, do not, trying to get it out of one's head. This is not something you can reflect on with your intellect alone. You must think with your heart. And so by going there, going to Zurich the next day, this is the act of someone who loves Allah, and someone who understands his time and understands himself. Now, this kind of teaching, this tarbiyah, is exactly the tasawwuf of, and I've sort of illustrated it all to say just how different it is and how peculiar it is to our times and how different it is to what came before. But it is absolutely the tasawwuf of Imam Junaid. It is the tasawwuf of Nizam ad-Din Awliya. It is the tarbiyah of exactly of these great shuyukh who have preceded us. And it is, as well as that, the stress which is vital to this time on what you know in your own heart and the individuality of it, and then from that point being able to come together with other people. That this is something that is again reflective, or is exactly the same as those great wild characters that came before us. This is the way of men and women who reject all the uniformity and the conformity of the modern world and the asphyxiation of modernity, and instead, as Sheikh Abdul Qadir always stressed to all his murids, it said you have to live well, you have to enjoy yourself, and you have to enjoy yourself so that you're thankful to Allah, and that other people see you, and they realise that this is a glorious way to live, and that they want the deen for themselves, and that they want to know and love Allah by seeing it within you, because really that's how we learn most of what we learn. It's just by looking at each other. So we ask Allah to give us we ask Allah to give us understanding of, and knowledge of Him. And we ask Allah to give us understanding of ourselves. We ask Allah to give us to increase our capacity for reflecting on all the complexities of life. And we ask Allah to give us a light-hearted joy within our lives. And that we ask Allah that we live full of hamd and shukr, and that it is reflected in all our being. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammadin abdika wa rasulika an-nabiyyi al-ummi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam taslima. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun wa salamun ala al-mursalin walhamdulillah.